All right. We are live. We are back. Juliet, Alex, it's a pleasure to see you guys.
As always, a total pleasure. Thanks for always hosting this, Eric.
Great to be with you guys.
Yep. It is a highlight of my quarter. I really look forward to it. As soon as we get on the calendar, I get excited and nervous because I know I have homework and I have things I need to study, and I never feel prepared enough, but we let it rip either way. And it seems to turn out okay. So people like it. So I appreciate you guys doing this. And so there's a lot to cover. We're going to get into today a couple transactions, Crunch and EOS. We're going to get into the quarterly reports on Peloton, Lifetime, Planet, Expo, Garmin. And we'll touch a little bit on Sequel Brands, Anthony Geisler's new venture. And then we're going to talk about Casey Means specifically, Surgeon General, and that whole kind of MAHA grouping that we have going on right now at the top of the food chain within our health department. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation. Before we get into that, how are things been? Julia, what's been going on in your life in the Starrett household over the last 3 months?
We are all good. Our ski season wrapped up. We actually had a decent one, so that was good. I know you guys have still been skiing very recently, so I feel like my ski season ended a month ago, so now I'm in summer mode and been on my mountain bike a lot more. But yeah, we're all good. We're just trying to get a kid through junior year of high school, which is exhausting, and she's still busy heavy-duty water polo recruiting. So I think I'm optimistic that maybe by this next call, she'll have something on the board that I can share.
Awesome. Love it. Alex, how's life?
Well, I had an amazing trip to the North Pole, basically, in last month, and highly recommend going to Svalbard if anyone wants to extend their ski season into the spring and summer. But yeah, so that was amazing. 24 hours of sunlight, which is first time I've experienced that, and wildlife that I'd never seen before, walrus and reindeer. And we didn't see a polar bear, sadly, although I hear they're not particularly friendly. So maybe that's a good thing. But yeah, just an amazing trip. It takes a long time to get there, but it is worth the effort. So if you have any desire to get into the mountains near the North Pole, Svalbard should be on your list. And the skiing is amazing. You got to work for your turns, but they're definitely worth it.
Plus you said that it's at sea level. So for all of us who live at sea level and don't have the opportunity to train up at altitude, that sounds perfect.
How do you get there, Alex? What's the travel like from Jackson?
Denver, Frankfurt, Oslo, and then this little airport on the main island in Svalbard. So 4 flights, and yeah, it's almost a 24-hour excursion. So yeah, once you get there, it's worth it, especially if the weather's good. And if it's not stormy and white it out, and you can see where you're going and where you're skiing, it's pretty amazing.
Awesome. Well, I will put that on the list. And let's see, updates for me. Yeah, wrapped up ski season about a month ago. Did a little extracurricular up in British Columbia, which I was telling you guys about. Good kudos to Fernie Mountain for staying open a couple more weeks. And hit 1 million vertical this year. So that was a unexpected little bonus for my ski season. Not that I track that stuff, but obviously I do because I just said it. And what else? Podcast Collective is going really well. We continue to push forward and get great clients and trying to kind of elevate the whole podcast medium for our industry. So far, so good. And speaking of podcasts, just let everyone know, because we discussed this earlier, we are open to sponsors for this quarterly report. So if they imagine you, insert sponsor name, being talked about right now, you could be part of this. So we'll leave it at that. Contact me directly. Let's start with the transaction. So some big ones going on. Crunch and EOS. Do you want to lead it off with that? I mean, let's start with Crunch. So they had a big transaction. They had a strategic investment, right? What does that mean for a company like Crunch? I mean, they've been crushing it the last few years, especially. So what does this mean for them getting to the next level?
Yeah. So Leonard Green made an investment. And from what I've heard, it was a controlling investment. So my assumption is that Leonard Green is in control of that business now. And Leonard Green is a private equity firm that has been in the fitness space for a long time. They're the main sponsor when Lifetime Fitness went private. back about 10 years ago. They were the private equity firm that bought it, took it private, and then took it public again. So so they're an experienced investor in the fitness industry, and they're an elite, really successful operation. So it's great to have them in their vote of confidence in Crunch. And the HVLP category is having a moment. I mean, 2 major transactions with Crunch and then EOS. EOS also attracted a veteran investor, a private equity investor in the fitness world. And that was TSG, who previously had invested in Planet Fitness for many years, and may have probably done some other things as well. But I mean, it's interesting. HVLP is not particularly innovative. I wouldn't say it's price driven, but I feel like EOS and Crunch innovated to the extent that they added more services and, Group X and more personal training than Planet Fitness ever did. So it is an HVLP 2 model, I guess. So there is some innovation, but it's a pretty basic product and, at a really affordable price, like $10 to get into EOS. You can upgrade your membership and get other services, but so HVLP is having a big moment. Is that going to continue, or are they going to start sort of opening up across the street from each other and eat each other's margins, and sort of like 24-hour fitness and LA Fitness did back in the day? I don't know. It's so hard to predict, right? How much runway is left for these companies, but congrats to them. And I do want to say both of those companies have TSI people deeply involved in them. So it's the Crunch CFO was my CFO at TSI, Dan Gallagher. And then the main investors in EOS were the main investors in TSI, Bruckman Rosser, a BRS. So it's kind of interesting. These are folks who have been, in and around the industry for 20 plus years. So they're committed and experienced and knowledgeable, and these are really successful transactions for them.
Julia, any thoughts or takeaways?
I don't really have anything to add, but I do have a question for Alex on this, because I think we always feel like Wall Street struggles with the fitness business and investors as well. Like, what do you think this says? Does this say anything about those 2 challenges? Is that like a positive check for our industry, or is it just, are these people, have they always been involved in this industry and it doesn't really change anything in terms of overall perception?
No, I think it's a huge vote of confidence for the future, because they're making $1 billion plus investments in the industry, in companies that are going to continue to grow and invest and hire people. And I'm a little, I guess, disappointed that neither of them went public. Not quite sure why they wouldn't have considered the public markets, or maybe they did and they just got offers from the private equity world that were better. But that's my only regret. I'd like to see more fitness, successful fitness companies on the public markets.
And what would be, Alex, the pros and cons of going public versus going private equity at this point for these companies? In a broad stroke.
I mean, I think if the main investors want or need a liquidity event, so if they, need to make distributions to their investors, if their fund is sort of wrapping up, it is a quicker way to liquidity if you sell to another private equity group. Go public, you don't get liquidity for a while. You're locked up. You can't sell your shares for presumably at least 6 months. And then you don't know what the markets are going to do. So there's more uncertainty about your exit. But if you think there's a lot of upside, then you can go public, sell some of your stock, hold on to some of it, and go along for the ride. But in this case, I think they're both just They may have rolled over a little bit of their investment, but I kind of doubt it. I assume they took, all their money, all their chips off the table. And, and they're happy about that. And their investors are happy about it. And, and then we'll see what management does. If management sticks around or some of those guys peel off or gals peel off. But that's a lot of, those are two big transactions, in 2025 that we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. And it just feels, and we'll get into it with the other quarterly reports, but just the whole health club sector overall just seems very healthy. It seems like they're doing really well. So I think that's really exciting. I mean, it seems to be kind of the fundamental heartbeat of the industry is that's a lot of things feed off that. Okay. So quarterly reports. Should we start with, should we start with Peloton? What do you guys think? Let's do it. So I just kind of briefly got some stats here. The revenue is down 13% year over year in Q1 2025 versus 2024. So at $586 million. Their net loss decreased, so it improved from $167 million to $48 million. Subscription revenue was up 5% year over year to $445 million. And connected fitness products revenue was down 39% to $141 million. So just some high level numbers, but a lot of stuff to talk about in the report. Where would we like to start?
Well, I mean, I'll kick it off with, I do feel like they are digging out of a ditch and some things seem to be working. You can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Alex, but it seems like they're bringing in more cash than they're spending now and that their cost-cutting measures are working and paying off. So I thought that was a positive after a lot of quarters of very negative information. So it seems like they're sort of on the road to becoming a healthier company from my limited perspective. Every time I read their reports, though, I always feel like strategically, it feels like they're like there seem to be changing strategy a lot, especially with partnerships. They were doing like a bike rental program. And then this time they're doing a partnership with Precor to have instructor-led classes. And they have a Hilton partnership, which they have had. I think that they're picking up on the fact that people don't just want to be stuck in their home. They want to go out. And so they're trying to figure out how to make their mark in some sort of in-person way. But like my overall feeling about that is every time I read their report, I'm like, oh, okay, they seem to always change strategy and pretty quickly because, we're looking at this every 3 months. So it always feels a little bit strategically like whack-a-mole to me with this company. But overall, I thought it was positive. I mean, I was like, okay, they were in a real deep ditch and they're climbing out of it. That's how I saw it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a, as you say, they're in that ditch where they can't get much traction on growth. Like they haven't figured out how to grow the business at this point in terms of like top line revenue and subscribers. On those two metrics, they're declining or they're flat. They're kind of stuck or just around 3 million subscribers, but it's coming down. They'll be down probably 7% by the end of the year. But that's still a lot of subscribers. And, one thing to think about is, do they have pricing power? They haven't raised their prices in, I think, a couple of years, and they're at $44 a month for the subscription. For the people who are committed Peloton users, $44 a month is probably a bargain. So, and most of their subscribers are engaged. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see, a price increase in the near future. They are, they're talking about the treadmill growing a bit and more men joining. It's predominantly female joiners, but they're marketing to men more and trying to, increase growth that way. I think it's early and it's not a material yet, but that's a focus. And they're throwing off a lot of cash. I mean, they had almost 100 million of free cash flow in the quarter. So that's cash that is not going for investment. It's available to potentially pay down debt, to make dividends to the shareholders. And so I think that discipline, that financial discipline is pretty remarkable and really has been, I think it's been 5 quarters in a row that they've had free cash flow. So they have turned this thing around financially, but how do you grow it?
Yeah, I mean, you're basically saying they've turned it around by cutting costs, but haven't figured out how to grow.
And their CEO, Peter Stern, he's only been there for, what they say, 100 days so far. So, I mean, that's not a lot of time, right? So he's working on some things. But yeah, it seems like growth is that's key. But riding the ship, and then how do they grow? And you're right. I see the same thing you always do, Julia, is like, they're always like, there's some new strategic partnership or some new angle every quarter, right? You're like, what happened to the last one?
Yeah.
I'm curious what happened to the last one. So
yeah, like 2 quarters ago, they were like partnered with Michigan, but now that's gone and they're doing something with UT Austin, and then they're like renting bikes, but I don't know if they're still doing that. And so, it does feel like whack-a-mole to me.
Yeah.
It's still very much a bike company.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, what do you guys think? What do you think about their potential to do anything in person? Because clearly, I think that they're seeing, I saw their goal was to like have lifelong members, right? But I think maybe they're realizing that people don't want to just bike in their home lifelong. So they're trying to meet people where they want to be. And do you guys think they have any hope of being able to open up studios that would have traction?
I don't know. Tonal was an interesting experiment, right? They had their Tonal training lab last quarter in New York where they opened it up. I think it was just for 6 weeks. So it was it was a studio, but it was all Tonal and it had Tonal instructors, and it seemed to be a success by all their metrics or what they are looking at. So obviously strength is different than spin. There's a lot of spin options out there, a lot. A lot of them are in health clubs and things like that already. So I don't know. It's a tough one, but the brand's so strong. People love the brand. It's Peloton as a verb, right? So I don't know. What do you think, Alex?
I don't see the roadmap to growth at this point, but if they keep generating cash flow and have, a lot of expense discipline, then, they can take a lot of swings and try a lot of things. And maybe one of the darts is going to hit the bullseye. Eventually, I got to believe they can leverage the brand and leverage the membership and with 3 million subscribers and that kind of cash flow, at some point, I think they're going to figure out a growth vector. But I have no idea what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. We haven't figured no idea. This.
They're definitely trying things. We know they're trying things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not a lack of effort. Well, let's move on to Planet Fitness. So seems like pretty steady growth, amongst some economic volatility, as we could say, over the last quarter. We haven't even touched on that yet, but that's going to come up in numerous ways. But yeah, revenue increased by 11.5. Membership grew to approximately 20.6 million. So they added 900.
Yeah, I laughed to myself out loud when I read that. I don't know if you guys, that was the thing that stuck out to me too. It was like 900,000 more members.
1,000. Yeah, it's a lot of people. Same store sales, system-wide same club sales increased by 6.1%. So, actually, I had to look this up because I think if a lot of people listening may not understand what that means, and maybe you can explain that, Alex, of a system-wide same club sales, or same store sales, they seem to go synonymous. But yeah, maybe for reference in this conversation, why is that an important metric?
Yeah. So when you have a brick and mortar facilities, so when you open them up in the first year, the growth is significant, obviously, because you're starting from zero. So you're going to, say you grow from zero to $1 million. That is not same store growth. That is growth of a new unit. So when you look at same store growth, you want to take out the new stores and just look at the more mature ones and see what the mature business is able to do growth wise. So, it's pretty easy to open a store. I shouldn't say easy, but it's a different, metric to look at a new store versus a mature store. And the real health of the business involves both, but most of your stores are mature. So if they have 2,500 units and they're adding, 200 a year, 2,300 say are mature, how are those doing? Not impacted by the new stores. And, if they're growing at more than inflation, that means that they have some pricing power, they're adding some members, and that's healthy. Same store sales are declining. that's a sign that a business, it could be a retail business, a restaurant, a gym, whatever, it's all brick and mortar. That metric is critical. So 6.1% is good. I mean, Lifetime is about double that. Expo is about 4%. So they're all sort of beating inflation. And then you look at how are they accomplishing the 6.1%? Are they raising prices? Are they adding members? Are they doing both? Doing both is probably the best, but having pricing power is a positive as well. So I think in their case, they raised the new member price from $10 to $15 for the basic. And so I think most of the increase was pricing. And then they've sold more Black cards. So the more expensive membership. So I think pricing is driving most of the growth. But I think, so that's a healthy number.
Awesome. Juliet, any other takeaways on Planet?
I mean, this business always blows my mind. I mean, I read that they opened 119 new clubs just in this quarter.
So that's a total of 2,741.
Yes, that blew my mind. And I thought it was interesting that I think everybody is unsure, or at least I am unsure about sort of what our economy, the 2025 economy is going to look like, but they seemed, they still expect to open something like 170 new clubs and have revenue growth. And so they seem to be showing confidence that the business is going to continue to grow, even though we do seem to be in a sort of uncertain economic climate. So I just thought that really showed what a juggernaut this business is, because I think a lot of other people don't feel as excited about it or feel more shaky about what to expect. I'm always blown away by this Planet Fitness thing.
Yeah, and there's the underlying current too. Go ahead, Al.
Well, they grew during the great financial crisis, so they have confidence that. Not that we're anywhere near that level of, economic dislocation, but it's interesting. Most of the companies had to address that question, like what happens if we head into a recession here, or the consumer stops spending, and they're all hearkening back to the 2008, 2009 era, when fitness clubs and gyms did pretty well. All things.
Yeah, I mean, this is an N of one, but I owned a CrossFit gym during that time, and we actually continued growing and did great and really again, that's just our little experience, but I imagine a lot of other CrossFit gyms had a similar experience. And we realized that, even in shaky economic times, this is not, their gym membership is not what people are going to drop. They're going to drop other expenses. So, maybe that's what's pushing the level of confidence.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, Juliet, it's a resilient category. I've talked about that numerous times on this podcast, is and saying I started my gym in 2008, which people are like, what are you doing? But it is resilient. I mean, the other thing, because I remember researching it, and it was like, I did 10 minutes research just to justify my own beliefs, and then started the gym. And it was, people work out and they drink. That's two things that they continue to do during down times. And I felt pretty good, but it's proven over time. We're a pretty resilient category.
Yeah. We used to always say, well, when the unemployment rate goes up, people have more time on their hands and they got stress, and what better to do than go to the gym? Yeah. Yeah. One other thing on Planet that I thought was interesting was the click to cancel rules are in effect now. And historically, the industry's been pretty I would say, backwards in terms of how we allow members to cancel their memberships, and, certified mail and in person, which is so out of keeping with the times. But it was interesting that they said that it's the right thing to do, and we're doing it, and it's going to impact us a little bit for a month or two, but then things will go back to normal, and it might help on sales when you can say, it's, if you need to cancel, it's just one click, and if you move, if whatever, and it might help sales a little bit. So I'm encouraged by that.
which is a stark contrast to the old 24-hour fitness days, where it's like if you wanted to cancel, it was a thing. It was, yeah. You had to
like take an in-person meeting with someone, right?
Yeah, like a lawyer up.
Yeah.
Right, but then the piece of paper that you sign mysteriously disappears. Nobody can find it, and you're being billed 6 months later. Like, yeah, no, that's just not the right way to treat your customers.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we just mentioned lifetime, so let's do that one. The gold standard of the industry. I mean, gosh, so revenue rose by 18.3% to $706 million. Net income surged by 205.6%. Is that right? Like, can that be true?
Probably off a low base.
Okay. And adjusted EBITDA increased 31.2%. So things look good. We talked about HV, the high volume, low price, and now we're talking about a very, higher priced tier. Seems to be doing really well as well. So yeah, what's your thoughts on this?
I mean, I'll just kick in. I read actually in an article that it was described as Lifetime's now making real profits now, not just almost profits, which I thought was an interesting way of putting it. I mean, they tripled last year's results, and they're like pocketing money right now. And like Planet, they also seem confident in their projections and their I think they raised their 2025 goals. So, they just continue to slay all day from what I can tell. And it seems like they have a lower total debt number now too. So I don't know if that's just from I actually don't know the why. I'm sure Alex does. I don't know if that's from cost cutting or raising prices or, whatever it is they're doing, their debt load is safer now. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, their retention is the best it's ever been. Their average spend is increasing significantly. Most of the growth in the same store sales number is from increased spending. So higher membership price and more in-club spending, personal training, small group, food and beverage. And there's not that much growth in the membership number. There's only like 3% growth in that, but about 12 or 13%, same store growth. So most of it is from pricing power that they're using. And then they talk a lot about wait lists in the clubs now, which is definitely a new thing in the gym business. That's very much kind of a golf club, private, country club concept, not a for-profit gym concept. And so they're doing things differently. And, I think the one sort of blemish on the call was that new membership sales were a little slow, and they weren't very precise about how much slowdown there was or whether they expected it to impact results. They did raise their guidance, so it's got to be just a really, a blip on the financial results. But I think that spooked the market a little bit, and the stock has been down a little. If any gym company is going to be impacted by a consumer slowdown, I guess Lifetime would be at the top of the list, and Equinox, and the pricey ones where certainly a lot of people don't have a problem paying $200 and some a month who are members there, but there are others who may not join or who may cut back a bit. But yeah, overall they're firing, I would say, on pretty much all cylinders. I don't know how you guys think about their supplement business, because they keep talking about how that's going to be the leading supplement company in the world over time. I don't, maybe, but I don't know.
I mean, the only thing I have to add is I think the supplement business is hard, and I continue to be shocked that more supplement companies continue to hit the market, like how we are not saturated at this point there are so many supplement. I mean, it seems like everybody has a supplement company. obviously they have a captive audience and maybe that will help them because people are there and already spending and used to spending, and it might just be easier to get their protein powder there. But I mean, the amount of options that people have out there, I don't know. I think that would be seems to me like a line of business that's just sort of a nice to have to, make something easier for your customer to not have to order online or go to the store. But whether they make actual money from that, I guess I'd be skeptical.
I think there's a lot of margins in supplements. I think and we'll see what happens with the FDA because it's fairly unregulated, and there's a lot of things you can do in the supplement business. And I've had some people I know very well make a lot of money on relatively small supplement brands. Are they still around? No, but they're in and out.
Yeah,
and they did okay. And the other say, I noticed that too about the LTH nutritional products. Are going to put a lot of expansion plans behind that. The other thing was, it's interesting because this is starting to pop up a lot too, is the Lacey. So their AI companion in the app. I think in 2 years, this is going to be kind of just the standard, right? It's like you have an AI companion and they're feeding their own data in, right? So it's not data they're getting off the internet. It's data that's coming in through their portal. It's controlled data. It's clean data, I would presume. So they're kind of controlling that as far as how to get around the club, what kind of programs to do, what kind of workout should I do, things like that. So that's really interesting, which puts them, now in competition with one of our former guests, eGym, and their Genius AI and what they're going to be doing across clubs. And so I think everyone's on this AI assistant guided thing that we're on now, whatever kind of technological journey we're on now as a human race. I have no idea what's going on, but that was an interesting thing too. So
here's what I'll say about this, Eric. In 2005 for me, in 2008 for you, we should have started supplement companies.
I agree.
And not CrossFit gyms.
See all this gray?
That's the takeaway here, Eric.
Less.
Well, the other company that talked about AI a lot was Peloton. I shouldn't say a lot, but they definitely talked about it for a bit. And they're using it for personalizing workouts. They're using it to help customer service agents. I'm sure there'll be other uses. And you wonder, is that a competitive advantage for the bigger operators? Peloton can spend $60 million a quarter on R&D. What other connected fitness company can come anywhere near that? Not that they spend the money in the right way, but if they spend the money in the right way, is that a situation where the big companies just dominate on AI and then marginalize the small guys?
This is a dangerous topic to get me started on, Alex. But okay. I think I just, for example, I think people are going to get used to one or two AIs, specific, ChatGPT or Claude or a Grok or whatever you're into. I mean, I personally, so I have a concierge medicine. I had some blood work 12 months ago, then another repeat blood work panel. And I had some old genetic testing that I did with another one. I fed that all into deep research on ChatGPT, right? And I asked it a bunch of questions. It all came back with PubMed articles and annotations on all the suggestions it had for my supplementation, all these things. Now, do I trust it all? No. But when I go to my concierge doctor, right, I am armed with some really good questions, right? Hey, what do we do about this? This is alarming. This looks great, right? And I think that type of thing, people are just going to start. I know I'm a nerd, use this stuff all the time, but I think a lot of people are going to pick one or two things that they're going to use all the time. That's going to be their go-to assistant. I think that's the kind of world we're going to. But I have no idea. We're on this rocket ship of AI right now. No one knows what life's going to look like 10 years from now. So it is interesting, but I just wonder if it's a waste of time, to have your own developed AI specific to your brand. Is that worth it? Or do you kind of tag yourself along one of the major AI companies that are working at a much faster pace? I don't know.
I think when you're Lifetime or Peloton and you have all this data relating to your members or your subs,
right?
It's very targeted, and whereas ChatGPT or Grok or whatever is going to be more generic, I would think, more general. Yeah. They're not going to have that. They're not going to have that usage data, that engagement data, that membership data that Lifetime and Peloton have. So it's less relevant, maybe.
I think we need to have an entire quarterly report on this topic because
that's all I know.
I'd love to. Yeah. It's just, I don't think we can understate or overstate how transformative it's going to be in our lives. I was joking with someone else, 100 years ago, the Wright brothers know that, they'd be sending Katy Perry to space, right? With the technology they developed, and then also having bombs dropped, over other countries. Like that, it's going to go all across the board. I just don't think we know what's going to happen. So buckle up. That's all I can say. Exponential. I don't know. I mean, it read well, but then I started looking at some of the numbers. I was like, well, wait. So revenue decreased by 4%, right? Net loss reported of 2.7 million. System-wide sales increased 18% to 466 million. So I guess for my naked eye, I got mixed signals here. But what are we looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just echo that. I mean, I read they had they have 42.6 million cash on hand, but they have $379 million in debt. Again, that seems not great to me. I also felt sort of sad. I mean, seeing that the average studio pulls in $6K. I mean, maybe that's a tidy little business for a franchisee, but knowing a little bit about the economics of running a studio, I thought, are these owners or these franchisees making like $20,000 a year? Somehow that number really stuck out to me as not very much for a lot of these businesses that, at least on the outside, look really polished and kind of fancy. But I don't know, $6K on average didn't seem great to me. And their CEO. Yeah, and their CEO. So I thought, I mean, maybe the impact of that is not yet being felt, but yeah, I'd love to hear Alex's thoughts on the CEO and all of that.
Yeah, the CEO retirement is really, that's really a mess, because he's been there less than a year. He had all these initiatives going. He just hired a COO. He just hired a chief marketing person, a chief HR person, a chief IT. So he's hired all these C-suite people who are hand selected by a guy who's leaving, right? So the next CEO comes in and is like, yeah, I kind of need my own team. This is, these guys seem okay, but I never worked with this guy. Whereas King had worked with most of these people at Adidas or Taco Bell or whatever. And so it really sets them back. And the good news is Club Pilates is doing great. Yoga 6 is doing pretty well. It seems like Yoga 6 is on the upswing, which is great. And I think the bar concept, Pure Barre, is doing pretty well. So they have some concepts, some franchises brands that are growing nicely. And so the financial picture is okay. I mean, they're down in, as you said, on revenue, they're down, but it's marginal. But it's kind of a mess. They have class action lawsuits by franchisees. They have all sorts of underperforming franchisee closures that are happening. So I would say it's a mixed bag. And overall, with no CEO or having to replace the CEO again in an environment or in an industry where it's hard to get, A+ people, they're in kind of troubled waters. That being said, maybe they'll find a unicorn CEO who's just amazing. You never know. And that could change everything.
Are you coming out of retirement, Alex?
Yeah, Alex.
No, I think...
Is this the announcement?
I don't have any franchise experience, but it's a good opportunity for somebody. That's for sure. It's they got a lot of things that are going in the right direction, and so. But I feel bad for them. Less than a year, they've had 2 CEOs. That's hard, especially for a public company. Speaking
of CEOs, is their ex-CEO and founder has popped his head up. Anthony Geisler has now announced that he's got Sequel Brands. He's already acquiring franchise concepts. I think he has 4 right now. Can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but I think one is a red light concept. There's a stretching mobility, I presume similar to Stretch Lab. There's a couple other ones that are, I think maybe a Pilates that don't quote me on that, but I know the first 2 for sure. So yeah, he's back at it, and I presume by the name of Sequel Brands that he's stating this is part 2 to what he's up to, and that won't be boring. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, how does he not have a non-compete?
I have no idea.
Yeah, because that seems like the only thing I can add is I was like, wait, this seems like the same company with the same sub brands.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's doing Pilates. Red light, I don't think
It might be a red light Pilates
recovery concept here.
Yeah. It's something I learned this week, that red light Pilates is it's a thing. Like it's popular in a lot of urban areas. So now they're like mixing boutique modalities together to create new experiences, which I always think I love. The boutique sector is so interesting to me because I feel like it's the testing grounds for new concepts. And then when those kind of get tried and true over time, then they get incorporated into the health clubs. And that's how you know they're sticking, right? So I think it's great. I love when people are doing cool stuff like that. Well, let's get on the last one. Garmin,
I forgot.
Garmin. Gosh, like they're
They
just
slay all day.
Yeah, they're awesome. So achieved record 1.54 billion, so up 11% year over year. Their fitness segment increased 12% to 385 million. Outdoor segment increased by 20% to 438 million. They continue to innovate, meeting the fitness market where they're at, and taking their best in class technologies and improving and making more use cases for it. So I think everyone knows Juliet and are huge Garmin fans, so I'm always cheering for these guys. But
maybe they can be a sponsor of this podcast.
Yeah, guys, come on, give me a call.
We are fans.
Yeah.
We are fans and users.
Yeah, good idea, Juliet. Nice plug. Juliet, any big takeaways on this report for you?
Well, I read that they keep more than half of every sales dollar after direct costs, so their gross margin 57.6%, which seems awesome to me.
Yeah.
I don't know how many businesses in any sector have that kind of gross profit margin. So, I mean, they just seem to have a lot of cash. They have a giant cash pile. They make a lot of money. They seem to control their expenses really well. Their forecast for 2025, I think they increased it. So I think maybe they even paid some dividends. Yeah. So, man, I am a fan of this company, and talk about slay all day. That's what I would say. They are slaying.
Slay all day. I like it. Alex, what do you think?
I'm speechless. It's a cash cow. And Juliet said they have a lot of cash. They have $2 billion cash sitting on the balance sheet.
Nice.
They sold 18 million units last year. I mean, compared to Apple, I think Apple Watch sold 40 million. But, Garmin just, I don't know how they keep doing it, but the number of SKUs they have is just mind-boggling.
It is.
Yeah, I know that because when my own watch gets disconnected and I have to go back and reconnect it, the amount of SKUs I have to go through to find mine is mind-boggling. Another thing I think is so interesting is they keep just selling and selling and selling. And in a way, at least looking in from the outside, until we started looking at these financial reports, I would think it was a more niche market of people who want these higher tech devices that stay charged for longer. But I mean, that doesn't seem to be the case. There have to be just like regular people that are excited about these watches, right? And other tools they have.
I mean, I think Apple and Google probably get a lot of that market. I think Garmin's number 3. And I do think they skew more towards the active lifestyle person and who's willing to do a little bit of research and pay a little bit more and spend a little more time figuring out how it works. But they seem to know their market so well. It's just, it's a crazily profitable business.
Yeah. Kudos, Garmin. Well, I think that's it for the financial or the quarterly reports, you guys. Well done. I think we covered a lot. Let's get on to kind of the I'll just say it, the subjective points of our conversation. Casey Means is the Surgeon General.
I think she's still just an appointee. I think she's still an appointee.
Fair,
yeah.
Fair.
Right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, as this kind of new, I don't know what you want to call it, like this Maha grouping of people continues to evolve and, more people jumping on, and it's unusual, right? This is a very unusual cast of characters that we would have leading nations' health directives. So I guess, where do we want to start? I mean, is she qualified? Is she talking about the right things? Is it, there's a lot of people up in arms, be like, she's so non-traditional, right? To what we would have as Surgeon General in the past. I don't know. Where are we at? Is this the right direction? I'll start with, I like the fact that we're talking about metabolic health. I think that's something that's really good to have in the conversation. I think out of all of these typical these pointies that we have going on right now, it's like, I like the conversations that are being had now compared to a year ago, right? About general health and, kind of how people can improve their own health on their own and foods and things like that we all know as industry folk that this is fundamental, right? To the fight against all of the issues we have in this country with our health. Now, how that's going to happen? Well, I don't know. I don't know. Are these the right people? I have no idea. So who wants to start on this one?
Geez, I mean, I'll take a swing.
Yeah.
I think the counterpoint to what you're saying about the conversation, which I made a little bit last time, that actually these are not new conversations, but they're being done in an environment on Instagram and social media that is much more performative and much more out there. And in fact, there have been a ton of people doing deep work and research on this, especially in the scientific community, but those people are often working in labs and not public. So I think that would be my counterpoint to that I think you could talk to a lot of people who are working in a lot of organizations and who would say these aren't new conversations and this isn't new research and this isn't that new. So that would just be a counterpoint to that. I mean, I think my view on Casey is actually I have a lot of admiration for her leaving a profession that wasn't serving her. I mean, I did the same thing when I left my practice of law. I admire that. I really admire her, social media presence. She wrote a book that has, as a fellow author, that has just crushed. She wrote a good book. She has done a masterful job marketing that book. I actually am a client of her brother's company, TrueMed. We use TrueMed at the Ready State to help people. So I have a lot of admiration for both of them, and she's done a great job with Levels, her company. I mean, she's an entrepreneur. Like, she has so many bona fides, many of which I have extreme admiration for. And the traditional side of me, though, says that our Surgeon General should be a licensed doctor who's practiced medicine. That's the more traditional Juliet speaking. And then I do worry that there's a lot of performative speak, but how they're going to execute on some of these under an administration that is massively cutting scientific research, cutting environmental regulations, cutting programs like the program where schools got access to fresh food. I mean, that's just 3 of probably 20 other examples that the larger administration, in my view, is, and cuts to Medicaid and SNAP are also, I think, not great for the health of our community. So I think they're going to be working under an administration that may not share their priorities. And then, like I said last time, I think the vaccine thing is a problem. I think that's difficult for me. Those are kind of my general views on it. I'm sure someone's going to get real mad at me on Facebook for that, but that's kind of my point of view.
I like the usage of performative too. And I think that's something, it's like, these are all people are out there. They're not in the labs doing the research, right? They're out on podcasts, they're on Huberman, they're on Rogan, they're on all these big things, and they're out there, telling really good stories. And people like that. I think people like that, whatever comes on, and no one's fact checking a lot of the stuff that comes out. So performative is a really interesting word to use within this conversation for sure. Alex, you suggested this topic, so I'm presuming you have some thoughts here.
Yeah, no, I knew you guys would be better versed than me, but we're in the preventative health business, right? That is what the fitness world does. So it's kind of, for a lot of people, this is, in our industry, this is sort of a dream come true to have somebody, one of ours, as the leading voice in the U.S. medical system. I think for a lot of people in the industry, this is just the godsend. And, the Surgeon General, it's sort of an antiquated concept, I think, in a lot of ways. I don't think that person has a lot of authority to do anything. It's a really small office, a couple $1 million of budget. And so it's a platform for whoever gets the job to promote a different way of thinking about addressing, critical public health issues in our country. So, I have some reservations about some things I've heard from her, and I think there's a reductionist sort of simplification and sort of an ideological approach that I think a lot of people have around wellness and health and fitness. And I hear that a little bit from the leaders of the MAHA movement. And that always sort of turns me off, because I think the picture is really complicated. We don't really know what causes, for example, obesity. The people who study it the most are like, the data is just not really conclusive in terms of causality. There's a lot of correlational stuff, and there's a lot of common sense that you can apply to it, and what changed, from the 70s to where we are today to raise the average, weight of a U.S. male from 170 to 200 pounds. And, but we don't, at the end of the day, I don't think we really know what causes it. And for just looking at obesity, for example, whereas I think the MAHA group would probably say we know enough. We don't need to study the hell out of it. There's common sense that you can apply. I think the public health approach to obesity, with sort of nudging people in the lifestyle, to the right lifestyles, has not worked. So, something like a GLP-1, pharmaceutical intervention, bariatric surgery, those to me are helpful in solving a problem. They're not the be all and end all. And ultimately you want to avoid the problem to begin with. But, I have a sense that the MAHA group is probably like, we don't really want to make GLP-1s that available. We want to focus on nudging people in the right direction. And I don't think nudges have really worked. So
if I could just add something to this, just that was sparked. One thing I think that I noticed too is that there is a big difference between individual health optimization and public health. And many of us, I would count myself as one of those people, is I'm in an individual health optimization business. And most of us in the fitness business are, and that's where our expertise lies. We are not public health people. We don't have education in it. We're not experts in it. I don't necessarily think Casey Means has an expertise in public health. And at the same time, I understand that, what people see on the outside is like ultimately sort of a failure of public health, right? Like there's been a lot of smart people working on this and haven't been able to solve this problem. And so if we can bring a new set of eyes, maybe people who have a totally different perspective to the mix, maybe that actually will be what makes a sea change. But I do think that that's an important distinction. It's like we aren't, just because you are good at you can sell individual health optimization products does not mean that you are a public health expert. And when I think about public health, I don't mean to leave all the adults behind and say it's too late. But for me, where my mind goes is to kids. That to me is our best hope of solving these problems, is not having, making sure kids today don't become the obese people that we're having to deal with. Because I think we've all learned that backing people out of obesity, minus GLP-1s. So far, a lot of really smart people have tried and failed at that, including a lot of us in this fitness business. So to me, the best hope is how do we, spend money on kids programs and kids education So that's where I think sometimes I disagree with the Maha movement. I mean, to me, I'm like, hey, why don't we make a mandatory cooking class in every single high school in America? Well, that costs money that people don't want to spend. Why don't we bring back real physical education in every school in the country? I mean, that's, again, money people don't want to spend. But there are some things you could do for kids that are real public health solutions that are possible because we have these institutions that are schools where things could be implemented that could really make a huge public health difference. I mean, if all kids had 5 days a week of PE and learned how to cook and understood what food was, if elementary schools implemented the daily mile where every kid has to walk them, I mean, there's literally 20 things that could be implemented in schools that the federal government do not totally control, but federal and state governments. That could be a gigantic windfall. So sometimes when I hear talking about like red dye number 5, I'm like, what are we talking about here? Like, I don't buy my kids Fruit Loops. So that's not a thing. But my kids did go to schools where they had no or very little PE and definitely didn't have any, health or fitness education that was meaningful. So I think, to me, that's where we can make some huge difference.
It's, I think in this industry too, we can get a little out of touch with the general masses, right? Because people who walk into our gyms can afford it, number one, and are obviously interested in some form of self-improvement. So we're meeting people certain that. But I know you and Kelly have talked about this, Julia, is like it's a lot of it is socioeconomic. Like we have socioeconomic issues deeply in the core of our health problems here in the country as well. And how do those get addressed from a public health standpoint? Like as a former gym owner and someone who interviews a bunch of people, I don't know how to do that, right?
No, me either. Yeah, me either.
Yeah, I have no
ideas,
idea.
But
I have ideas, right? And then, anecdotally, I could talk about the same thing you can is like, we used to do as our nutritional and lifestyle challenges evolved in the gym year after year, we found that the number one thing that was the most value to people and that we saw make the biggest change, we had a cooking class. And I was like, people like, we would just literally, I don't think this is even illegal, bring like gas burners into the gym and like, chef would come and be like, this is how you dice a green pepper, right? And this is how you make pasta. And I was like, holy cow, like, I took all this for granted. And I think there's base level education that never happened for a lot of people. When you topple in the socio neck, it's really hard to care about your nutrition and health when you work 2 jobs, you're worried about your next bill cycle and your rent and all these things. It just doesn't add up. It's like, we'll worry about that next month, right? So I think that's something that our industry can maybe, and I'm just talking at myself right now, is like maybe be a little more aware of like how we come across, because these people in the Maha movement are kind of fitness and health people. Right? Yeah, they're influencers. Right?
They're individual health optimizers. I mean, all of them, that's what they're good at,
Really
and I always really bristle at, I bristle anytime I hear people offering overly simplified suggestions to what are extremely complicated problems. And obesity is one of those, right? I mean, I think we could all agree, like, a lot of really smart people have tried to tackle this. And, it's just been in the last, 18 months or 2 years, we've had a slight downward trend in obesity, and that's 100% GLP-1s. So, complicated problems often can't be solved with simple Instagram posts, or maybe never, never.
Or a little bit of salt in your water. I don't think that's going to solve all the problems. Although it tastes good in the morning, right? It does.
So has anybody read her book? Have either of you read her book?
I read it.
What, do you recommend it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's well done, and I think she does a really good job, sort of talking about her personal experience and personal story. Like Eric said, she's really kind of the first person to really, or maybe partly because of marketing and success of her book, really bring this idea of metabolic health to the forefront. There's some kind of like sort of woo-woo stuff in there that I don't totally relate to, and I think even she has said that she knows that's not for everybody. But yeah, I mean, I think it's well done, and I think it's worth a read.
Awesome. I will. Well, we'll see, I guess. Yeah. We'll see what happens. I mean, she still has to get appointed, right? So,
yeah.
It'd be interesting. I mean, I guess when I take a step back, I like overall that something new is happening. I don't know how it's going to pan out. 3 years from now, it could be like, oh shit, like I really wish we just stuck to the old way. Like we were better off. But, it seems like something new is brewing, a new approach, some new thoughts, some new opinions, fresh perspectives. Now, we're all humans. So there's a lot of points of failure involved in that transition, but we'll see what happens. As we wrap it up, any final thoughts, state of the industry, directions, politics. No, actually no politics. Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Well, just
Juliet.
back to the companies that we study, I think my biggest takeaway in looking at the companies as a group was I felt excited that by and large, they felt excited and confident about the financial future and sort of the growth of the businesses, because, there's so much crazy stuff happening in the economy, a lot of which is sort of outside my own expertise to really understand what the impact is. But if I look at these companies in our little industry who have, and maybe it's because we're a resilient industry in amid financial chaos, but I thought that was really promising and it made me feel optimistic.
Alex.
That's a great observation. I think the new leadership at Peloton, at Planet, the old leadership at Lifetime, I think it's really strong. And then the success, at EOS and Crunch, remember people left brick and mortar for dead during COVID. Those companies were shut down. Their revenue was, a fraction of what it had been. They had left them for dead. The future was digital. And here we are, 4 years later, and those, the brick and mortar is thriving. So you never know what's going to happen, but it's pretty darn impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I forgot to mention this, but I do believe that the FIT Act got snuck into the big, beautiful bill. So we'll see what happens with that. We've been talking about that for 15 plus years. So Who knows, that could be interesting. But overall, as I talked all these trends and things that are happening, I think what you just touched on, Alex, is like at the core part of the industry. When people think about the fitness industry, they think about health clubs, right? And they're very healthy. And I think that's a really good sign for our industry, because you're right. 4 years ago, I remember getting emails from people on my email list being like, the gyms are dead. I've been an operator for 10 years. People, I'm telling you right now, people do not want to work out. They're dead. And I was like, whoa, man, that's a horrible way to, why do you even have your gym anymore? But obviously that's been proven wrong. And, I think the connected and the Web 3.0 and all these things that we've talked about over the past 5 years, we don't really talk about them too much. I mean, we haven't even talked about longevity a whole lot recently. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, as a category, that was real hot 6 months ago. So, you follow the trends of the industry, and I think we're all kind of on top of them, what's going on and what people are talking about. So I like it. It feels good to know that the health clubs are doing well, and the base of the industry is really solid right now. And there's a lot of room for optimism. And I think that creates a lot of opportunity for creativity and new venues and getting more people in. And so I think it's a lot of fun right now. I'm having a lot of fun in the industry, and I haven't said that in a little.
Yeah. Now, if you, last thing, there's a brick and mortar concept that Peter Attia has started called Biograph. I don't know if you've seen that at all.
I haven't.
But there's a clinic in New York City and a clinic in San Francisco, and they're open to the public. I want to say 5,000 or 7,500 for a year. And it's basically a lot of tests, a lot of diagnostic tests, and then analysis. And so the longevity, it may be ebbing a little bit, but there are concepts out there that I think are going to show us whether the demand is there and to what degree and for what. And I'm sure Miura will hear about that. And so I'm not giving up on the longevity movement yet.
Well, you made a really good point. I think it was 1 or 2 episodes ago on this, Alex. It's like everything's getting figured out. The pricing, the menu of offerings, the curation, everyone's kind of figuring out how to put all this together. There's definitely demand, but it's what's it going to look like in the final product? And I think that's what everyone's trying to kind of figure out. And I don't think it's gone away by far. I think longevity is a big deal, but it's going to probably kind of come back in 2.0.
Yeah, it's about product market fit.
Yeah.
What fits the market? Where's the demand?
Yeah. Well, to all the people listening, thank you, by the way, for listening all the way through. If you have any topics that you'd like us to cover, towards the end of this, shoot me a message. We'd love to consider. We'd love to hear from you guys. And you guys, Juliet and Alex, thank you so much. I always learn so much from these guys, from these conversations, and it's a lot of fun. So thanks again for doing it.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Always so fun.
Yeah, that is a wrap.